Identify a single spokesperson. Speakers have up to 3 minutes. Speakers will address remarks to the president. Speakers will conduct themselves in a civil and respectful manner. Speakers will not address personnel or students. If a speaker wants to speak a second time, they may speak at public input 2, and the board president has the right to discontinue public input at any time. At this point, is there anyone for public input number 1? Please sign the paper at front, please.
Hi, I'm Grover Pagano, live in Sag Harbor Village. Excuse me, but I read ahead in the business items tonight, particularly number 7.4, approved deposit in the facilities improvement capital reserve fund. I recalled in a prior meeting on the budget, it said that reserve fund will have a balance after the Marsden vote of approximately $1.5 million. I think Ms. Buscemi said that. So my question is, if I look at the bylaws of that reserve fund, I believe it's under Ed Law 3651, it says when the voters determine that the original purpose of the reserve fund is no longer desirable, the reserve fund may be liquidated by applying the balance first to any outstanding bonded debt, and then, subject to certain limitations, to the annual tax levy. So I guess my question is, will you be adding $1.5 million? And if you will you be retiring the $3.425 million? And if not, why? Since your stated purpose of that reserve fund before the vote was earmarked for Marsden, and then your replenishment of approximately $1.5 million would be to replenish that reserve fund.
You want to handle it? Or?
Yeah, so the capital reserve.
Are you done?
Well, that's
Okay, great. If you could take your seat, then we'll answer. Thank
yeah,
you.
sure. Sign in.
Great.
So the capital reserve fund was set up in 2021, way before the Marsden project, and the voters authorized the use of the capital reserve fund for any kind of capital project that needed funding throughout the district. So we still have a lot of facility needs within the district, and we will continue to deposit funds at the end of the year into our capital reserve until we hit our limit. We never withdrew that 3.4 million from Marsden,
right.
That never went ahead. So that 3.4 is still sitting in the capital reserve. And in addition, we're going to add 1.5 million to the capital reserve. So now when the facilities committee and the board agree to do another capital project, they could go ahead and access those funds with voter approval.
With voter approval.
That we're not going. That's why I said you need to sit at your seat, because we're not going to go back and forth. You've asked your question and Jennifer has answered, but if you have more questions, you can ask at public input too. Thank you. Is there anyone else from public input number 1? Scott? Great. Okay. I have no comments. Mr. Nichols, you have a facilities update?
Yeah. Part of it pertains to what Jennifer was just speaking about. And that is that the Educational Facilities Planning Committee, under her leadership, has met throughout the year. And they will be coming to the board with advisory recommendations in the latter half of June. And Jennifer is scheduled to make a report to the Board of Education regarding the committee's progress this year at the June 26th meeting, I believe. But it's important to know that we as a district have facility needs that we need to continue to address. And some of the big ticket items out there that I'll mention this evening that the public should be aware of that have been on our radar and continue to be on our radar are certainly it starts with any updates to the security infrastructure that we have in the district. We hired a consultant who has been working on school security. Included in the areas of focus is the security infrastructure. So when that audit report is issued, included in that audit report will be some recommendations pertaining to upgrades. And certainly that's a worthwhile usage of the reserve fund in question. We've also talked about the possible expansion of the science wing. And we hired a consultant to lay out some schematic designs in the Pearson Middle High School. And the tentative thinking is that if we were to move forward with that addition to this facility would be accessible to students in grades pre-K through 12. So it wouldn't just be a middle school, high school focus, but we've talked about involving the elementary population and the learning center population as well. And then finally, there's also the big ticket item of the middle school, high school gymnasium. So if you've been in there, know that there has to be either a significant upgrade or an outright replacement of that building. So part of what the Educational Facilities Planning Committee is going to do is they're going to present their prioritization of these issues in an advisory form, and then the board will wrestle with that and decide how they want to approach it in a multi-year plan. One last facility note on tonight's agenda, you'll see a renewal of the Massachusetts Park contract for 23-24. And you should know that we went through, we being the district went through, and with Brian Tardif, we looked at our facility needs and noticed that in one area, the contract really didn't address it sufficiently. We brought that to the attention of the park board. They readily agreed to a change in the contract language that addresses that shortcoming. And so we feel for 23-24, the contract is in good condition to be approved. That does it for the quick summary of the facility update for the district. Happy to answer any questions.
Ron and I are on.
No,
so
sounds good, yeah.
we're on it.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Great. Thank you. So at the next board meeting, Jennifer, you'll be giving a full rundown of our year-long work.
Yes, with the other committee members.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. All right. May I have a motion to accept consent agenda items 6.2 through 9.7?
So moved. Second.
Discussion. So Jennifer, is there anything that you want to clarify on the question that we were asked at public input 1 before we approve that?
For the capital reserve. No, the capital reserve, basically the voters authorized it. We can deposit up to $15 million in the capital reserve.
So let me just say that again. So as a district, we're allowed to put into there up to
$15 million.
million.
We set aside $2.5 million for already for the HVAC project. So that is sitting in the capital fund for that project.
Mhm.
There is no other projects earmarked in that fund right now.
Okay.
So this $1.5 million will be deposited at the end of the year, and then that will be added to our current balance of about 3.5 million. And by the end of the year, there'll be a balance of roughly $5 million in the capital reserve fund that we could use towards some of these projects that Mr. Nichols just discussed with voter approval, of course.
Anybody have any questions on that or like to ask anything on that? No? Okay, great. And we have the park contract, which will be done. I know that Mr. Tardif is still going to have to work to find a field, I believe, for the girls soccer team. We do not have a field for that at the moment. So it might be best in the girls too. The facility, because we don't have the field for it, nor does the park at this point. He did also bring that to the park board's attention. We just don't have it. So that is a need. So, but I'm glad the contract's signed and ready to go. Okay, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Mary has it up for us.
Mary
Whoever doesn't have
and I.
their computer up, they.
Well,
That's unanimous.
Wonderful. All right, we have two committee reports this evening. We have diversity and inclusion.
Hello, everyone. I just have one area that I would like to report back on, and that is in the area of professional development. So our subcommittee has met several times in the last couple of months, and we've finally been able to narrow down who we would like to bring into our school to offer professional development. There is an organization called Impactful. They are based in Connecticut, and they offer PD for grades 5 to 8. There's one film in particular called Ways to Be Human. And because we would be presenting this to students in those grade levels, we thought we should include our student subcommittee. So they have previewed the film. They gave it the thumbs up. The good thing about this particular organization is they offer not just the film for viewing, which is what the students would be seeing. It's also workshops that would be ongoing. They assign us a support person. They also have like a workshop toolkit that we would have access to for the entire year. So on top of the film itself, which is what we're hoping to have our students view, they have a really great selection of things that would be important for follow-up. And this could be offered to our students, also to our faculty, and also to parents. So the next thing for us would be to present as a committee professional development to Mr. Malone and Ms. Carriero, and hopefully get the approval for next school year for 2023-24.
Great.
Thank you.
Mike Guinan is not here this evening, going sick, so that would be your policy committee.
Okay.
We carry that over to the library.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any items for discussion? No.
No.
Okay. Public input number 2. Is anybody online for public input too? Great.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Janice Dono. I wanted to ask about something that came up during the run up to the Marsden vote. And that's about the community kitchen at Stella Maris and about it possibly being used to supply hot lunches to the elementary school. And what is the thinking for making that facility be able to do that? I know that you had said that you didn't have a mechanism for getting food from one building to the other, but given that more than a quarter of the elementary school students are food insecure, it would seem that that is something that should be on the facilities committee radar and fast to try to resolve this issue within the village and the schools. So if you could address that.
Can you address it?
I'm not addressing it.
So with regard to the fact, you are correct in stating that over 1/4, it's actually 26% of the elementary school population is eligible for free and reduced lunch. All of those students receive lunch daily, as do many other students in the district, specifically the elementary school. As I said, leading up to the Marsden vote, the issue of providing hot lunches is really more a logistical issue as it relates to transport and also where the students would eat those lunches. And also logistically, how many lunch periods would you have to schedule in order to make it happen? Right now, the system's working very, very well. And again, those students who are entitled to lunches, or those students who elect to purchase lunches, are certainly able to do so. We did discuss the issue at the Educational Facilities Planning Committee and talked about several scenarios that the committee will continue to talk about in terms of how we might address it. And those options include addressing some of the logistical issues through the possible reorganization of grade levels. They also could be addressed through a creative solution where students remain in the classroom, but logistically, we really haven't figured that out yet. So that's the summary.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else for public input number 2?
Sure.
Just again, in line with the earlier discussion, I was cut off. I do remember in the budget presentation that the plan for the Facilities Capital Reserve Fund was $1.5 million. So I have 2 questions. Have you ever almost doubled a reserve fund? 44%. Have you ever done that any fund in any budget year? That's my first question. And if so, if your plan was correct just a few weeks ago when you presented it, what has come up incremental for $3.5 million, right? If your plan was for 1.5 million, and again, the bylaws of this reserve fund, if it's
The
liquidated.
plan was for 15 million. The
Wait,
reserve.
I'm not done yet. I get 3 minutes.
That's why.
I get 3 minutes.
Yep.
Right? So if that fund is retired, and you know what? It's a third question. How is that fund retired? Because if that fund is retired, the balance pays off existing bonded debt, and any overage goes to buy down the tax levy
If the fund is retired.
if the fund is retired.
So we
Let's
had.
Those are the 3 questions.
We're not doing back.
Those are the 3 questions. So in summary, have you ever grown any reserve, Jennifer, by 44%? If the budget was $1.5 million for this reserve, or I'm sorry, Sandy, President, if the budget was $1.5 million for this reserve, what are you doing with the extra $3.5 million? And how is this retired?
So Jennifer, you don't feel compelled to chronologically go back and answer whether the fund has been increased by 44%.
No, what happened was that we had a capital reserve in place and it was expiring because the capital reserve, I believe that capital reserve was a 10-year capital reserve, and we had a balance in that capital reserve. The balance in the reserve was probably close to $3 million, but since it was expiring, we had to have the voters approve a new capital reserve. So those funds from the old capital reserve were actually deposited into the new capital reserve when the voters approved that back in 2021, because in June, our old capital reserve was expiring on June 30th, 2021. So since that time, since 2021, when the new reserve was established, we deposited the funds from the old reserve into the new reserve. And then we also added $1.5 million into that reserve at June 30th, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. And now we're going to be doing the same thing this year. So the balance itself grew by $1.5 million each year, but it started off with a chunk of money from our previous capital reserve. So it never grew by 40% in any one year. And when the voters approved that capital reserve, they approved it for any project that we could go ahead and borrow funds for. So if there's any project that we bond, we could use those funds for that project, but the voters would still have to approve the use of the funds for that project. So the capital reserve was, when the voters approved the use of the capital reserve back in September, the funds were never removed from the reserve. They were still kept there. And then when we had the revote and voters didn't approve the use of the capital reserve, we never touched those funds at that time either. So those funds are there for any capital project that the board decides to move forward with.
And the fund was never retired because it was
Only
extended in
expired.
2020.
Yes, the old fund was expired. So in order to use those funds and access those funds, we had to have a new capital reserve with a new expiration date and a new cap. So because it had those funds from the retiring capital reserve, it looks like we started off with, we started off with a big balance, but it wasn't as if.
It was the expiring capital
the
reserve, not the
expiring
retired. You've
capital
never
reserve
retired
needs.
the capital.
Yes.
And then just the last comment, Jennifer, and you said it several times, but it's important for the public to know, the expenditure of those funds is contingent upon a vote.
Yes.
So again, the public gets to weigh in on whatever it is that the district proposes is the use for those funds. And as I said earlier, we certainly have facility needs, as any district does. And, prudent financial planning would suggest that we put these funds aside so that we can address our facility needs in a measured, thoughtful way over a period of time. And that's why your report on the 26th, which I sort of gave you guys a quick summary of what's going to be covered, is important.
Yeah, no, you did it. It's a great job. You don't have to answer any more of that. I mean, that's just, that whole question is leading.
All right, what else we got?
That's it. We are going to convene into executive session to discuss contracts and the superintendent's evaluation. And I have a motion. Favor?
Aye.
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 Right.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.